All right, welcome to Tile Coach. I'm Isaac Ostrom. Really glad you're checking out this video because one of the main questions I get from DIYers when I get emails and submissions through tilecoach.com is how to do a dry pack. And I know a lot of first timers struggle with this, and it's a really nice skill to have to be able to do a dry pack instead of doing a foam. For one, it's a lot more cost effective to use deck mud, which is usually about $6 a bag, than it is to use a foam pan, which can cost up to $300 or $400 depending on if it's a custom one. Or being able to do a dry pack is great not only for a DIYer if you're going to be doing it more, but also if you're looking to get into tile. This is something you will want to know. So I came up with a great method for beginners on how to do a dry pack successfully. I want you to be successful in this, so I put some thought into how to do it, because the way I do it, I do a lot of it by feel and with levels and everything. This is kind of a dry pack for dummies. So you've came to the right video, so let's get started. Okay, so we got this nice little mock-up using Durock cement board. Well, it's actually perma-base. It's similar to Durock. It's cement board, but it has little styrofoam balls in it that make it a little bit lighter. But for all intents and purposes, it's 100% cement board like Durock. So I did that on the walls, I did it on the curb. One thing you need to make sure of is that your curb is level. Before we begin, you need to make sure you have a level curb, which we have here. And if you don't have, and so you need to check that. So if you put in your curb, whether you're using 2x4s or you're using foam or bricks or whatever you want to use, you need to make sure that's level before we begin. And if you wanted to, you could always use thin set under the Durock on the top, let that dry, come back the next day and then screw it down. Or you could use shims, some way to get this curb level. You need your curb level anyways. If you're doing a job, curb needs to be level. So we're level here. The next thing I did was actually I took a Sharpie line from the top of the curb, level, going all the way around my walls. So you can see here I drew a Sharpie line going around, and that's level off of the curb. And then you want to make sure that you check here to make sure that you're still level all the way around, which we are, bubbles in the middle. So we got a nice line. So this line here is level with the top of the curb going all the way around. That's the first thing I did. So the second thing I'm going to do is I need to calculate my slope. The nice thing about these flofx bonding flanges or Schluter bonding flanges is that you're able to screed right off of the top of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, I just got a couple scrap pieces of the Durock, some shims, and I calculated out. So we want 1/4 inch per foot is what we want for our slope. That's required by code. You can be within 1/4 to 1/2 inch of slope. So what I do is I take the farthest point, which is the diagonal to the drain, and I have 18 inches to the inside of the bonding flange. So 1/4 inch per foot, that equals 3/8. So what I did is I used a combination of Durock and some tile spacers, horseshoe shims. You could use whatever you need to get it right. And I made it level. So you can see I put some shims. I put 3/8 worth of shims. I have 2/8, which is 1/4, and I have 2/16, which equals 3/8. And I made it level. You can see right here, I have a level. So this is the height now that I want my second line to be. And I'm just going to mark right there where I need it. So I'm making a Sharpie line right there. So that's where I'm going to need my dry pack to actually be. So now I don't need to draw this line all the way around. I just need to be able to get the measurement. So I actually didn't need to make a line. I could just measure here. And so I have a measurement of 1 3/4 inches. So I have 1 3/4 inches, and I'm going to use that. Now this measurement is arbitrary. It's going to change based upon the height of your bonding flange and the height of your curb. So don't take this 1 3/4 inches measurement. It's going to vary depending on those two factors. So I'm just going to make a note, 1 3/4 inches. Now what I have is, this is just some MDF flat stock. You could use baseboard. I like MDF because it cuts really easy, it cuts really smooth, it goes through the table saw really easily. So you will need a table saw to do this. Most of you guys do have a table saw. If you're doing home improvement projects, I do suggest you pick up a table saw. Even if it's like a Ryobi, a cheap one, it's gonna come in handy for a lot of the work you do around your house. If you're a pro, you already got one. So I'm gonna cut this. So I'm gonna cut this at 1 3/4 inches. 1 3/4 inches. I'm gonna lock my rip fence in and go ahead and cut this. So now I should have 1 3/4 inches here, and I do, just strong of 1 3/4 inches. 1 3/4 inches. That's going to work. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut them to size to go all the way around. I got 34, and then this one's going to be 23.5. So another tool that you probably already have, and if you don't have one, get yourself a chop saw. So I'm going to put this 1 3/4 board right along the top of my curb line here. Screwing this down. So you can see here, this is top of the curb is right up here. Okay, so a little recap here. The top of my ledger board is level going all the way around. You can see I got the bubble right in the middle. Level going all the way around. And the bottom of my ledger, again, because we calculated off of the slope that we needed, that's going to be where the finished dry pack is. So now that we have the ledger, I'm going to create a screed strip basically with a notch in it that lines up with the top and the bottom of this screed point. So as we screed, it's going to be screeding off the bottom. And this looks perfect. I actually didn't calculate that out. This is a piece of 3/4 and I cut this notch. So as you can see there, the notch allows it to screed off of the top and screed off of the exact height that we need our mortar bed to be. So now that I have this, I'm going to build another one with the same notch because I want two sizes. I want one that's going to do the corners going all the way around, and I also need a shorter one because I need this shorter distance as we screed. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this notch. so I have my one screed stick for the long sides. I'm going to cut another one that just is shorter, that goes to about there. I just don't want it to go past the other side of the bonding flange, because the bonding flanges have a slope on them, so I don't want to be screeding off of this. I want to be screeding off of this. So I'll just make that cut with the chop saw. So now my short one, I'll be able to use like this. Really nice. That'll be my short one for both sides. And I'll be screeding. Actually, I need to make it a little bit shorter because I don't want to be riding on that. So I'll just take another 1/4 inch off. Now we should be ready. Okay, so now that I have this all set up, I got my screeds, I got my ledger set up, everything's ready to go. The next thing is to do is go ahead and mix up the deck mud. What I'm going to be mixing up is this Sackcrete deck mud, and I'm pretty stoked because we found this at Home Depot. And now that means, like, if you're somewhere not in California, you can probably find this at your Home Depot, or Lowe's, at least in California, carries some sort of deck mud. If you can't find what we call deck mud, 4-to-1 Mapei is available at Lowe's, or if you have a Laticrete supplier, their 209 mud bed, I think they call it. But basically it's a 4-to-1 sand to cement mix, and really nice. This is what we'll be mixing up. So let's get started. The water ratio is 2.5 to 3 quarts per bag. So I got a handy little measurer right here. So I can do, there's 3 quarts. I'm gonna start with 2.5 because I like a little bit drier mix, just to get us up to our 2.5. These paint buckets, you can usually find them in the paint section where they have the ounces, and a lot of times they have liters. These are really nice to measure out your water. So how I'm going to be mixing up this deck mud, or dry pack as some people call it, is just in one of these heavy duty construction trash bags. I think these are 4 mil, or I think they're 4 mil. So it's just a plastic trash bag, the heavy duty one. And so I'm going to go ahead and pour my deck mud into here. I already have a bag open. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just putting my deck mud right into the trash bag. And you could also do this in, if you got a wheelbarrow, you can chop it up that way. You can actually just lay it on a tarp and kind of move it around and mix it up. But I got the correct amount of water. So Luke, why don't you come in here so you can see this? So I just have my deck mud in here. I'm just going to add the water. Add my water in here. And then I'll lift it up. And I'm just gonna move it around, kind of roll it around like this. Back and forth. Try to get all the little corners out. And voila, we got our deck mud mixed up. So that's the consistency. It's just, you can just ball it up like you'd be building a sandcastle with. And so that's a really easy way to mix up a bag of deck mud. Okay, super easy, right? We got our deck mud mixed up. The next thing to do is I'm going to put a slurry coat on this mock-up because this is a concrete base. I made this to look like a concrete slab. This is typically what you'll see in homes. If this is a plywood floor, if you're looking at plywood when you do your shower, you're going to need to put down some plastic sheeting, and you could actually use, like, cut up that garbage bag just as plastic sheeting, and some lath like this, you'll staple the lath down onto the plywood subfloor and then do your float. You don't need to do a slurry if you're on plywood and using lath. If you're going on concrete, we want the deck mud to bond to our slab, so we're going to use a slurry. Now the slurry is just thin set that's mixed up a little bit looser than you normally would. And I'm just using a notch trowel. You can use any old thin set. This is Latacrete 253 Gold, but it doesn't matter. You can use whatever you want. And we're gonna just put this down on the cement slab to help bond the deck mud to the concrete. And while we're at it, we're going to put some slurry to the bottom of the flofx to help the deck mud bond to the bottom of the flofx drain. If you want to see how I put this flofx drain in, I will put the link in the description so you can see that video. Okay, now that I have my slurry down, I'm going to just cover up my drain hole. I probably should have done that first, but that's okay. And I'm using skinny tape. It'll take me a little bit longer, but not a big deal. That'll just keep the mud from going down your drain. Now I have my deck mud. I'm going to go ahead I'm just going to go ahead and spread it around. Get it where it needs to go. And so you can see one whole bag is plenty to do this much. So this is probably an average of about an inch, I would say. This is like an inch dry pack. And this is 6 square feet. If one bag does 6 square feet, typical shower it's 3x5, which is 15 square feet. That would mean 3 bags is what you would need to mix up to do this. But for us, it's just 1. So I'm just spreading it out with my flat trowel. And I also want to pack it underneath the bonding flange. I want that bonding flange to have nice support under it. So I'm packing the dry pack under the flofx drain. This would be the same if you're doing a Schluter. It doesn't matter. Again, what's nice is, you know, at least on the 3 sides, I have a nice gauge of where the mud needs to be. And I also want to make sure that I'm packed all the way under that ledger. So I'm taking my mud and I'm making sure it's packed all the way to the wall under the ledger. And that's pretty easy to do. So you can see I'm not tamping it down yet. I'm just getting it into place about where it's going to be. I'm going to put the rest of the mud on here. So it was a little low here. I dipped a little bit below my ledger on this corner. So I know exactly where to go. And speed is important when you're doing this, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to make this method, this dummy-proof method, because the longer you work with the mud, the more chance you have of it crumbling and kind of sloughing off the top. So the faster you work, the better. So that's that's something to take note of. Okay, so now that I have it, you know, I'm just using my trowel. I'm not really tamping it down yet. I might give it just a little pack, but I'm not going crazy with it. So now I can start screeding it off. I'm going to start in the corners. I'm screeding off the drain, and I'm screeding off right here. And I usually like to do my four corners first. And I see I dipped, my stick fell off of the ledger and dipped down, but that's no problem. Look, I just fill it back in and make sure that my stick is on there. See, now it's really easy to screed and get that nice level perimeter. And I'm not worrying too much about my little bumps and lumps, because there will be some bumps like that. So my excess mud, I'll probably grab a bucket. So I'm just going to take some of my extra, throw it back in the bag because I got way too much here. And I really like this because I'm not stressing out on how, you know, being perfect, because the ledger, if I screed off that, it's gonna be right. So I just wanted to get some of my mud out of the way. And every once in a while, you might just need to take, isn't that funny, I'm using a piece of baseboard. Flat stock might be better, but I'm just, yeah, every once in a while, you might need to just clean it off. Oops, I dipped down again. Again, see, this is what usually happens with DIYers, is they dig down too far and it messes it up. But as long as you have the ledger here, you can just put the mud back and just go for it. Okay, so now that I have most of my long sides done, I'm going to go ahead and, here you can see now I'm just screeding off of the top of the curb. Since that's level, my screed is going to be level. Oh, I dipped down again. You see, like 3 or 4 times my screed came off of the notch, but it doesn't matter. I just real quick go back, fill it in, and screed some more. And this isn't the normal deck mud we use. You can see there's a lot more clumps in it and whatnot. It's a pretty rich mix, this Sackcrete. So it's actually good that I'm using it, and if you end up using it, if you see little dips and stuff like that, that's okay. It's not a big deal. We're gonna fill those in a little bit. So I'm going back to my longer screed. Go back to the shorter. Once you get a lot of mud built up like this, it's nice to have a bucket or something to put your extra mud in, because it's harder to screed if you have a lot of material to move. You know, I want about that much material to screed off. It's just going to make it easier. So now I'm going back to my short one. Back to my short one here. And now I'm just going to take the excess off. You want to bucket? No, it's good. So taking my excess off, and I'll do another little screed here with my short guy. Another little screed, just getting. Now that I still have some excess mud on here, I'll use that mud to fill in any of the pits and stuff that I need to do. So I had some pits. I'm going to just kind of press this down a little bit, maybe tamp it down a little bit. Tamp it down some more. Okay. And I can just take my trowel like this and then put the mud where I want it. Tamping down again. Okay, so I basically have the shape and slope that I need. So I'm just going to take this excess mud off using my flat trowel. Okay, so now that I have the basic down, and it's a little rough, there's still some holes and some clumps and everything. I'm going to use this wood float to just kind of smooth everything out and tamp it down, and use a circular motion to kind of fill in any of the gouges that you see here. Just tamp them in, and then you can rub it to get any of those little holes out. And again, now at this point, you just want to be careful, but even if you did gouge it out, you still have your ledger, so you could go back and fill it in. See, if you just go in a circle motion with your wood float, it'll fill in these little pits. And again, the richer the deck mud, which again, a 4-to-1 mix is rich compared to what we usually use, you end up with more of these clumps. But it's basically like having training wheels on your float, because again, if I were to gouge into this, I could always use my ledger still up. And that's a really nice feature of using a bonding flange drain. You can see I'm working right off of the top of it, instead of with if you're doing a pan liner and that type of drain, you can't work right off of the top because you have to count for the thickness of the tile. So again, I'm just going to sprinkle in my little pits. And I don't like to do my final tamp until I have everything filled in pretty much. So I'm just using circular motions. See a little pit right there, just throw a little mud in there. And just like so. Just fill in any little potholes. And when if you're using a wood float, when it gets caked up, you just take it and get the excess off of there. You want a nice clean wood float as you're working. little potholes. So that's looking pretty dang good.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's a nice float. So I'm gonna take my trowel now and clean up the edges. So last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give it a nice hard. I'm putting firm pressure down on the float now, and again I'm putting the pressure on the back edge of the trowel. You never want to put pressure on the leading edge because it's just going to dig in. So as long as the pressure is on the back edge of the trowel, it's going to really give you a nice smooth finish. Just like that. So I'm really impressed with this method for someone who's never floated before. I think this is a really good way to do it. I'm gonna go ahead and take off I'll call these the training wheels, right? I'm gonna take off the training wheels and just finish off the edges and we should be done. Okay, so I'm taking my training wheels off now. That's pretty good. I'm gonna just take a little bit of, I didn't quite get it all the way into that corner, in the corners, but it's okay. Any little holes you can fill in, just like that. One last time with my steel trowel just to pack it in. We can vacuum that up tomorrow. No need to mess with that. And let's check level one more time. Okay, so I'm gonna check level going around the perimeter.
Pretty darn good.
Pretty darn good. Check level around the perimeter. You can see we got a nice level perimeter slope. We're really close. I mean, it's never going to be perfect. Even if I would have used my other method, it's never perfect. But you can use your level. You can see there, like how good that perimeter is right there. And then lastly, we'll check our slope to make sure we have good slope. And you can see there, we have good slope going down. So there you have it. I guess doing a dry pack with training wheels, I guess you could call it. These videos are meant to help you get better. It's really hard to find qualified contractors, and sometimes you guys just can't afford it. So I make these videos to help you. If you would like to support our cause, you can go to tilecoach.com. If you need help on a project, we have booking services where I can do one-on-one coaching through Zoom or FaceTime with you, or you can just pick up some merchandise or one of these flofx train. Anything you can give is much appreciated. It helps me make more of these videos for you. So I hope this helped. Last but not least, I love you. I love being your tile coach, and we'll see you on the next video.